man.
No, be real.
Oh. I would say probably 4 minutes.
Wow.
Is that enough?
That's not enough.
Hello, San Francisco. Here we go. Welcome to Win, Lose, or Draw. Show the folks at home what it is. Go. Calendar, day of the week. Day of the week, day of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Month.
Week.
January, February, March, April, March.
July.
June, July, August, September,
The whole
October,
year.
November, December.
Wait a minute, you got December.
December.
Okay. December 31st, New Year's Eve. Yeah, New Year's. Okay,
All
you
right.
got New Year's. All right, New Year's.
New Year's.
Very good. New Year's resolution.
Don't anybody be offended.
New Year's resolution.
All right. Chinese New Year.
That's it. Hey, you got one. You got one, big guy. Okay, San Francisco. We'll be back in a minute.
This is an original cigar label, and that cigar label is one that's labeled a little African, a dainty morsel. And again, it shows you the image of a little black baby with the alligator. And in Louisiana and Florida, they would drop black babies in the swamps for alligator bait. So in my journeys, I have found various articles and items with alligators and babies. Now this one is like a letter opener, and the letter opener is an alligator, and the pencil that goes in the alligator's mouth has a black baby's head on it. I also have pictures that were used as advertisements for stores or liquor stores. There were actual postcards that were circulated through the mailing system with alligators and babies. So you'll see ashtrays, you will see different kinds of items with alligators and babies.
Very interestingly, there were a set of changes happening in this country in the mid-'80s that conspired to, in the aggregate, change all of childhood. Stranger Danger was born with a made-for-TV movie, Adam, about the abduction and murder of Adam Walsh in 1983. Everybody tuned in for that show, and it scared the bejesus out of everybody. The Playdate was born in 1984. Parents started arranging play with other parents, deciding with whom and when, but also watching over it, hovering, micromanaging. Are they playing with the right things? Are they bored? Let me help them. The self-esteem movement. Give them ribbons and trophies, certificates and awards just for playing soccer or just for swimming rather than for being any good at it. A Nation at Risk was published saying American teenagers needed to be, more high achieving vis-a-vis their international counterparts. We needed more testing, more teaching to the test. All of these things meant that childhood was now watched and managed by parents. We also got safer in cars with seatbelt laws and car seat laws and bike helmet laws and bicycles. We got safer in our transportation. It led to this mindset of you can put a helmet on them always. You can bubble wrap every aspect of their environment. Prepare the road for the kid instead of prepare the kid for the road. All of those things happened in the span of 3 to 5 years.
Okay, this happened to me years ago. I fell down and I fractured my wrist. I actually broke it. You see it? I broke it. But here's me lifting a car with one hand, you see? And here's me lifting furniture with one hand, you see? You see? And here's me lifting a thing of candy bugs with one finger, you see? See? And then here's me open up a can of cream of mushroom soup. Because I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. And that's what I do. I lean on Jesus. And yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
My Lord, are you wonder? Yeah? Are you wonder? Yeah? My Lord.
We have seen the most deranged behavior from Israelis. We've seen deranged mothers on TikTok dressing up their children with black eyes and missing teeth, or making fun of parents losing babies. We've seen soldiers urinating on Palestinian captives, children attacked by dogs, sexual assault, rape. Are Israelis aware that public perception today of Israel is of a deeply depraved society?
It matters that for a generation, pretty much, the right has been in control of the education ministry. It matters that much of the Israeli media acts as an inciter to genocide. This is Radio Rwanda of the 1990s in that genocide on steroids. It matters hugely that we have built layer upon layer of dehumanization of Palestinians inside Israeli society. It matters that so many world leaders have adopted the Israeli narrative, that criticism of Israel's criminal actions, genocidal actions, is merely mouthed.
So let me ask you two questions there about that. Tell me what is Yagoda, and what happened with the Bolsheviks and the Christians?
Oh, you just casually killed 10 million Christians. It's incredible. People think that the greatest mass murderer was Adolf Hitler. And no, actually, if you want to talk about genocide, the fact that people in America don't know about what the Bolsheviks did to Christians, where did the idea of a concentration camp come from? The Bolsheviks. The reason why we're not allowed to learn about these people, we don't talk about Henryk Yagoda, is because he's a Jew. Right? And so it conflicts with the narrative of Jewish people always being the victim in every single circumstance. So we're willing to push away Christian history. We don't talk about Christian history whatsoever because they have this bizarre focus, our classrooms, on training us to have this bizarre allegiance to Israel. And so to suit us, I feel that we are heavily propagandized in the classroom. And the reason why I feel that way is because we spend years talking about the Holocaust, only for me to learn when I'm out of school about a bigger Holocaust that took place at the exact same time.
And I have to say, my personal opinion, I think, yes, they did intend to at least seriously injure or kill her. And it's not just about the fact that, was she pregnant, wasn't she? We'll never know because they embalmed her against all French law so quickly. And all the other speculative things you see in the press. It's also the fact that it was reported that she was being a great success in the landmine campaign that she was running. But also, she was about to go into campaigning on the behalf of the Palestinians. Now, you can imagine someone of Princess Diana's profile doing that. They would not have tolerated it. They could not have dealt with that. So I think that's why she was taken out.
We always talk about absent dads, but we don't talk about toxic mothers. Do you see what I'm saying?
What's the disconnect with these types of students that you see?
Nobody listens to them. Nobody separates the trauma from the child. You don't know where they're coming from. They're coming from abuse. They're coming from food insecurity. They're coming from mothers who just cuss them out. You know how we just say, good morning, how are you? You want get your fucking ass up. You just like your dad. You're never going to be anything. So when you start programming the child's mind like that, by the time they come to school, I'm still processing everything that my mom said to me. How can I focus in math when I don't even feel good about myself? You get into school, take your hood off, do this. How about, hey, did you eat today? Are you okay? You need a hug? I don't think people do it on purpose, and I don't think parents do it on purpose, but I think that's how they were raised. You know what I mean? And so it's like, well, I turned out okay. No, you didn't. You're messed up. And like I said, I'm in therapy. I mean, because of the stuff that I went through. It's like when I come in, I create that safe place for them. I build relationships with them. It's not all about academics. It's about how are you doing? Are you okay? Did you eat today? I even wash clothes at school. People don't do that. Like, I give my kids like duffel bags, and they just roll it up to my office, and I'll go wash their clothes and fold it and send it back home, because I want them to show up at their best self. As an educator, I don't even just look as an educator. I'm a life changer. That's how I look at it.
Okay, so how often do you take a shower? A new study says a daily shower is not necessary. In fact, they say it could increase your risk of an infection.
All right, so this is according to researchers from Columbia University. They do know their stuff. They say excessive showering can reduce skin hydration, leaving it dry and cracked. That's why there's lotion, though. Anyway, they also say bad bacteria can get into those cracks, and good bacteria often gets washed away.
But what about other cracks that need to be? I'm just saying, especially if you work out, like, you gotta get yourself clean.
Orlando, hear me now. High Tide Harry's has the best child. High Tide Harry's. Beautiful decor and food galore. Family fun for everyone.
We now have research telling us how toxic baby diapers actually are, and it is shocking. Mamavation just tested 65 diapers from 40 top brands for PFAS chemicals, and 23% of the products were found to have these cancer-causing forever chemicals. And I'm not talking about small, obscure brands. They are amongst the world's largest, like Pampers and Kirkland. PFAS chemicals are linked to numerous health issues, including reduced immunity, allergies, developmental problems, and increased risk for cancer. We also know that pregnant women and babies are particularly more vulnerable to the harmful effects of these chemicals. And it doesn't end there. Many of these diapers were also found to contain toxic chemicals like TBT or tributylin, or organotin compounds like dibutylin, DBT, all linked to neurotoxicity, hormone disruption, reproductive, and developmental toxicity.
The entire blood supply in America, and basically the whole world, is contaminated with this virus.
It's dependent on ownership of these people who are no longer Homo sapiens. In fact, they renamed them Homo borgenesis. So what human rights does a Homo borgenesis have? Homo borgenesis is the species that they have named vaccinated people, and I use the term vaccinated loosely. The genetically modified people are now referred to as Homo borgenesis, not Homo sapiens. You can see it in the very first, I think it's the second page actually, in the NASA Langley research paper on fifth generation warfare. They say humans, whatever, and Borgs. So they've already said that people are not going to be Homo sapiens, and therefore the question arises, if Maria is no longer a human for purposes of the law because she's been genetically modified, then what protections does she enjoy under the penal code? Let's use the law against them, and we can do that. And that's one of the reasons why we're suing. And one of the ways I'm trying to stop them is, in our case, it's Robert V. Austin in the 10th Circuit. I put in front of the court the question, is it true that people who were given mRNA gene therapy shots are in fact now the chattel property of the patent holders? What's interesting is the Department of Justice, who defends the Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, and the FDA, all at the same time they defend them, didn't deny it.
Creep on in, on in, on in.
How much I have to fuck around to find out what I need to find out. See, as you can see, the more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
That morning, I was supposed to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning every day. I called my supervisor because I was not going to work. I was going to take a sick day. Made it there at 8:30 in the morning. Go straight to the lobby, down to the basement. The building has 6 sub-levels of basement, B1, B2, all the way down to B6. Basement 6, basement 5, all the way up to basement 1 were all Port Authority areas. Some of them have parking for tenants, some of them have storage. B1 office, B1 level, is what they have the support office for my company, the cleaning company, American Building Maintenance. So I was talking to the supervisor, and at 8:46 we hear boom! An explosion so hard that pushed us upwards in the air, upwards. And it came out from below us, from the mechanical room that was right below us. And it was so loud and so powerful that all the walls cracked The false ceiling fell on top of us, the sprinkler system got activated, and everybody started screaming so loud because they didn't know what was going on. And the first thing I'm going to say is that a generator just blew up on the B2 level, the level below me. And everybody's screaming. And when I'm going to verbalize it, 6 to 7 seconds after, we hear, bah! The impact all the way on the top of the building of the plane. Two different events separated by almost 7 seconds, separated by time. And now, I work in the building for 20 years. I know the difference of a sound coming from the top and one from the bottom. So when everybody started, what the heck is going on? A person comes running into the office saying, explosion, explosion. His hands extended, all the skin pulled from under his armpits, on both arms, hanging. And we thought it was clothing. It was part of his clothes. Until he gets closer, he was coming like this, like a zombie. Explosion, explosion. And when I looked at him, I realized it was his skin, like when you take off a glove and you let it hanging. And when I get to see his face, all this part was hanging of his face.
Tell the story about how you tried to find out what they call the Mossad when they deal with publicly.
I thought it was a reasonable question, but the trouble is you can't pick up the phone book. There's no Langley in Israel that you can look up, CIA, or in our case, the Mossad. We thought we should ask, what shall we call it in English? You can translate the Hebrew words, as I said, Mossad is institute, but when they write a letter to their friends in the CIA or the British intelligence, what do they call themselves? It took a while. It was a matter of asking the Prime Minister's spokesman. The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why you want to know and all that, so we explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. I mean, if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS. Just simple words like that. Interestingly enough, kind of a British model.
Disguise can be so many different things. It's not just a mustache and a wig. Not at all. It's not just a person, and it's not just that person's face. It's quite broad and deep. You could just hand a handful of poorly made props to a man who could act, who could get into a character, who could believe himself that he was this changed, poor disguise and carry it off. And you could spend $10,000 on a disguise and put it on someone who couldn't wear it, and you would see it immediately. So the way you wore it was just as important as any materials that we ever provided.
There are historians of the CIA who referred to you as, and they've used the James Bond movies as their analogy, the Q, the woman who was essentially the Q of the CIA for a number of years. Did you like that?
It wasn't me that was the Q, it was the office that I worked in, and it was the Q. We were the technical arm of the CIA, and more broadly of the intelligence community. And today that's 17 different organizations. What it was saying when it called us the Q is that we had the technical expertise to do almost anything.
I've been in rooms at the top of the top, which albums are prayed over demonically. Music is prayed over demonically. That goes out to the world, goes out to the radio stations, goes out to the public. And when you see that stuff and know that stuff, it's frightening.
What do you mean by that, Shane, prayed over demonically?
So, rituals, ceremonies, everything to bring, to give light to the devil, to Satan. It's a satanic music industry. That's majority of what it is.
Do you mean figuratively, or do you mean literally you've been in...
Literally, yes. If you look at what the music is today, the industry is today, for all your Sam Smiths to your Dojo Cats to your Beyoncés they are so demonic, it's unbelievable. And we can't, it's in front of us. It's something that we kind of go, oh, it's just music. But it really isn't. It's absolutely taken over the world, taken over our children, and taken over everything that's coming to the times of world crisis.
Elon Musk having a 13th child with influencer Ashley St. Clair is not a story that I would typically cover, but an interesting detail about Ashley caught my eye, and now I'm down a rabbit hole. WikiLeaks just exposed that the mother of Elon Musk's child, Ashley St. Clair, is being managed by PR strategist Brian Glicklick. Brian Glicklick. That's hard to say. Anyway, important part is that Brian has received $598,000 from an Israeli security firm. Here's the original WikiLeaks citation coming from the Times of Israel, which led me to think, is this a Mossad honey trap situation? This led me down the whole Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky rabbit hole, which, if you don't know, she may have allegedly been Mossad. This is an article from 1999, which talks about how Israel blackmailed Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky tapes. Yes, the steamy talks between the two of them were captured by Israeli intelligence, allegedly. Details came from this book, Gideon Spies, The Secret History of the Mossad by Gordon Thomas. Then about a decade later, another book came out that pretty much corroborated the same story, except this time with the added detail that the Clinton-Lewinsky tapes were used in order to negotiate the release of Jonathan Pollard, who was an American intelligence official turned Israeli spy. Quote, a New York Times article from November 1998 reported that the two leaders, referring to Netanyahu and Clinton, had discussed Pollard's release during the ill-fated conference, and that the Israelis had told the president something that opened up the possibility of Pollard's release, something the Clinton administration had explicitly ruled out during the first 6 years of his presidency. The Times article noted that a White House spokesperson told a reporter that Clinton was simply newly impressed by the force of Netanyahu's arguments. Isn't it interesting that time and time again, president after president, they have all found Netanyahu to be impressive and convincing? Anyway, back to Elon. What could they be wanting out of him? I can only conjecture. But one thing we do know about Elon is that he used to be pretty pro-free speech. Here's an article from November of 2022 saying that he's going to grant amnesty to suspended Twitter accounts that the ADL deemed to be anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. A couple years ago, Elon actually blamed the ADL for causing Twitter/X to lose advertisers. But then he, meets Ashley St. Clair May of 2023, as the reporting goes. October 7th happens. November, Elon is taking a trip to Israel to quote-unquote learn the truth. And then he reverses his previous stance on free speech. And now in 2025, the ADL is defending Elon for, an awkward gesture. All of this is, of course, conjecture, but I will say that the timeline is a little sus. What do you think?
Is not anti-Semitism. Now, I'm Jewish and I'm an anti-Zionist, but my great-grandfather lived in British-occupied Palestine in the 1920s and 30s, pre-World War II colonialism, and served as the mayor of a town in Palestine. So clearly, history did not begin on October 7th, and Zionism has and always will be violent. I mean, Zionists collaborated with Nazis before the onset of the Holocaust to try and establish a Jewish state in the land of Palestine. Mossad agents blew up synagogues in Iraq to create a hostile environment to, again, encourage people to move into the land that was Palestine. And every day since the Nakba, Israel has violently dispossessed Palestinians of their land, of their rights, and of their lives. So to call Israel out for these atrocities is not anti-Semitism, but anti-Semitism is real, and it is on the rise. But do you know why it's on the rise? It's because the White House will tweet Shalom Mahmoud when detaining Mahmoud Khalil, an anti-Zionist activist, basically waving a flag saying, hey, we're violating your First Amendment rights for the Jews. It's because the state committing these atrocities will outwardly say we're doing this because the land was promised to us. It's our land for the Jewish people. It's Chuck Schumer going on his book tour and talking about anti-Zionist protests and not neo-Nazi marches, or Elon Musk's Sig Heiling. When you perpetrate an apartheid, when you committed genocide, and then when you support it, all in the name of the Jewish people, that is what causes anti-Semitism to be on the rise, not the opposition of those horrific crimes. Being blind to the fact that this is going to turn around and create actual danger to the Jewish community is so unbelievably damaging.
I have a Zionist friend who keeps saying, well, the Arabs could... Well, how much land were the Arabs giving? Why can't the Arabs be generous? My immediate response is, well, why wasn't the United States generous? Why not New York and Connecticut or something? Or New Mexico and Arizona, which were actually asked for. The Zionist movement at one point asked the United States if it would be willing to give up Arizona and New Mexico and create a Jewish state. And the United States said no. But we're willing to let you do it in Palestine. So like we're willing to be generous with other people's stuff, but not our own. And that's the thing that I don't get about the United States and our policy towards Israel. Okay, if it's such a good idea, why don't we do it here? Let's give the Israelis a homeland here that'll be Jewish only, and if you're not Jewish, you have to get out. And when you put it in those terms, suddenly it becomes maybe not so desirable. And then the other question is, Palestine obviously had nothing to do with the Holocaust. We're obviously doing this in part because of the Holocaust. Well, why don't we put it in Germany then? Why didn't we carve off a chunk of northern Germany and call it New Israel? Hamburg could have become New Jerusalem and just give them northern Germany, right? That only seems fair, especially since most of the Jews that we're talking about were either American Jews, and most of them were of German descent, or they were European Jews, and most of them were of German descent.
We take the children of our enemy, which is the white race, and we bring them to the basements in the synagogues where we drain the blood and watch them die there. It's very similar to how we do the sacrifices that we do with the kosher butchering, and so we do that, and then we mix it with the Passover bread, and so we eat the blood of our enemies. And the bodies, we're not cannibals, so what we do is we take those, because we can make some shekels, and we give them to the slaughterhouses, and those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why we made those the most popular things, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the goyim out here are really eating their children. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it.
Why is the FDA funded by the pharmaceutical industry?
Every major pillar of the U.S. healthcare system, as a statement of economic fact, makes money when Americans get sick.
The healthcare system's not broke. It's rigged. And we're the ones fitting the bill. This is not a Republican issue. This is not a Democrat issue. This is a humanity issue.
I took 0 nutrition courses in medical school.
The continued sickening of the American people is dreadful.
This is McDonald's French fries. In the U.S., there's 11 ingredients. In the U.K., there's 3. An ingredient called dimethylpolysiloxane is an ingredient preserved with formaldehyde, a neurotoxin, in the U.S. version. I want Americans to be treated the same way as citizens in other countries by our own American companies.
Girls are still being pressured to get on birth control, by the way, without informed consent, but now they get the added bonus of an antidepressant to go with it. Does this all seem overwhelming to you? Good! This is what the American mom deals with every day!
If a foreign nation did this to our country, we would consider an act of war. It is un-American. These companies have been allowed, through the profit motive, to destroy everything that we value in America.
If something has a label with ingredients in it, put it back. When they had the first labeling laws, any carbohydrate was labeled as a sugar, as it should be. The Department of Agriculture said, wait a minute, you can't tell people how much sugar is in there because nobody will buy it. And they decided that they would put total carbohydrates on the label, and then they would put sugars. What they agreed on is if you have 2 sugar molecules bound together with a chemical bond, that makes it a starch, not a sugar. And you don't have to put it on the label as sugar. You can put it under carbohydrates. We have an enzyme in our mouth called amylase. That's job is to break the double bond on sugar molecules. So the minute it leaves your mouth, it's no longer a starch, it's a sugar.
I would absolutely boycott Kellogg. I'm Victoria Kellogg, and I approve this message. Think of a single Kellogg that supports this.
You can't think of a single Kellogg that supports this.
Absolutely not. They're not going to seek out, but I don't think I can think of a single Kellogg that is. Maybe my reputation will be soiled after this, but I don't care. I am willing to lose money over this if people are safe. Money is not everything in life. But when you're sick in bed and your children are sick in bed for their whole life because they have health problems, money really doesn't matter. His intention was to help people, and now people are getting really sick, and it's really, really sad. You know, Kellogg's, I am really ashamed of you for doing this to me and my family. After all of the things we have done, you have betrayed my family.
American bread is not bread, and it's absolutely horrible for you. See, to get the fluffy, sweet, delicious bread millions of Americans love to eat, you need a few very special ingredients, like potassium bromate, an additive that makes bread rise, or azodicarbonamide, a chemical to bleach and strengthen the dough. Do you know where else you can find these chemicals? In yoga mats, pesticides, and even explosives. And all these chemicals have one thing in common. They can cause all sorts of cancer. That's why the European Union, the UK, and even China have banned them from food production. But not in America. To this day, the FDA says these additives are generally recognized as safe to eat. Ah, yes.
Turmeric versus human parasites. So turmeric contains curcumin, which is its active ingredient, which is indeed anti-parasitic, specifically against blood fluke parasites, which are the most prevalent parasites in humans. Yep, it even killed the eggs.
We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is an excuse used for capitalism, and we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. And we don't hate the motherfucking white people, we hate the oppressor, whether he be white, black, brown, or yellow. We're gonna fight racism, not with racism, but we're gonna fight with solidarity. We said we're not gonna fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. And we're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people. And these people in this class have divided themselves. They say, I'm black and I hate white people. I'm white and I hate black people. I'm Latin American and I hate hillbillies. I'm hillbilly and I hate Indians. So we fight amongst each other.
Because think about it this way. White people didn't undergo 250 years of slavery and its aftermath. White people didn't suffer through racial segregation. White people didn't have a government that restricted their ability to own property, open a business, or own a bank account to grow generational wealth for their children and their children's children. White people didn't have to go through these things. So if we were just to ignore the fact that black people in America had to go through all of these things that have now systemically disadvantaged them even today, and we were instead to say, ignore one's race and treat everybody the same, well then all of a sudden black people will continue to be disparaged. Imagine if you were playing a game of Monopoly with your friends, the banker, for whatever reason, really fucking hated you. He only gave you $10, gave everyone else $50, right? Then Mr. Jesus 2.0, man of equality, walks in and he says, well, I understand that you've been disadvantaged. I have the option to now give you an additional $40 to account for the fact that the banker kind of cheated you out of $40 to begin with. But instead, I'm just going to continue to treat you the same way I'm going to treat everybody else. Well, then all of a sudden, you're still experiencing a disadvantage today. And when we talk about programs or legislation to say target black Americans or target indigenous Americans, it aims to serve to fix the consequences of systemic forms of oppression in which have disadvantaged black Americans or indigenous Americans historically, which has perpetuated negative consequences that exist today for black Americans or indigenous Americans that don't exist for white Americans.
I agree with you. You know, we pushed them back. We held them down for so long. And, you know, whenever he finally was like, all right, you know, you can do whatever you want, they were down so low that it's hard to get up. I understand that. And I understand that we need to pay a little price. But, you know, the question's going to come in, when does it stop?
Is for the stupid motherfucker who decided to come on my page and ask me, what have Latinos, specifically Mexicans, ever done for us? Well, listen, you stupid motherfucker. Mexico had abolished slavery, and any enslaved person who crossed that border was automatically granted freedom. Mexico offered legal protection, unique legal protections for enslaved people from Texas and Louisiana. My people are from Louisiana. Mexico became a safe haven for enslaved people. Mexico helped enslaved people escape as part of the Underground Railroad. These are little known Black history facts. So never ask me what Mexico has done for us. I don't know what the fuck Mexico did for you, but that's what Mexico has done for us, for my people. And I will forever stand in solidarity with Mexico. I will forever vote for their rights and their benefits. I will forever stand in solidarity again with Mexico and the indigenous people, because they stood in solidarity with us. They were the first ones to stand in solidarity with us.
Hey, check this out. If you a Black person and you mad at the Latinos right now and you saying they need to go back to their land, they came here illegally, and you just treating them how white people would treat them, you need to check yourself. And I'm going to tell you why. First off, Black people and indigenous people been oppressed together by the same people for over 400 years. Secondly, it was a time where Black people was looked at as illegal immigrants. And thousands of us fled the South to go to Mexico. Why? Because the Mexicans were accepting Black people. And not only did Mexicans accept thousands of Black people, but they outlawed slavery. So when slave masters came to get these Black people, Mexicans said, you're not going to touch them. And they literally fought and shed blood to protect us. Like, they literally lost their lives and got hung with Black people when they did not have to do it. They didn't tell Black people to go back to the South. You bring in crime. They didn't tell Black people to go back to Tennessee and Kentucky. You stealing all the jobs. But instead, they showed solidarity and they stood with Black people when we needed it the most. And guess what? They need us more than ever right now. They being told that they illegal in a land that literally belongs to them. ICE is literally trying to lock these people up. They are modern day slave catchers. That's why here in the ISUBK, we keeping the tradition of Black and brown pride, unite or die. And since 1969, we've been unifying so-called Black and brown people. Shalom.
They always knew we were talented. Even when we had nothing, we had rhythm. Even when we were chained, we still danced. They studied that, and they turned it into a trap. Du Bois gave them the blueprint, the talented tent, the top 10%, the Black elite. They filled it with our singers, our dancers, our rappers, our actors, our preachers, our politicians, our influencers. They gave them deals, endorsements, billboards, magazine covers, mansions with glass ceilings and golden gates. They called it success, but it was a cage. The prettiest cage ever built. You sign the contracts, you take the photos, you smile with your other trap friends on the red carpet. You stay quiet while the people suffer. You nod and wave, but your soul knows. You were chosen to entertain, not to liberate, because one wrong move, one tweet, one protest, one truth, and you're no longer chosen. So you stay silent. They bought your voice with gold. They dressed your silence in diamonds. They told you made it. But what you really did was trade your freedom for fame. This is the prettiest cage they ever built to stop liberation.
More human remains from the 1985 MOVE bombing in Philadelphia have been found at Penn Museum. The museum says the remains match records of 12-year-old Delisha Africa. She was one of 5 children and 6 adults killed when Philadelphia police bombed the MOVE organization's headquarters. which caused a fire that spread to dozens of row homes in Cobbs Creek. The Penn Museum says it has been taking inventory of its collection since other remains from the MOVE bombing were discovered several years ago. Lawyers for the Africa family issued this statement saying, in part, for nearly 40 years, the city of Philadelphia, the University of Pennsylvania, and the Penn Museum have refused to treat the MOVE bombing victims or their families with even the most basic level of respect and decency. And this latest revelation is just the most recent in a long line of atrocities Black folks in America have had to live with. We are disgusted and disappointed, but unfortunately, we are not surprised. The damage Penn has done is absolutely appalling and unforgivable. It's time they did the right thing so these children can finally rest in peace.
For every day that they refused to tell us who was on the Diddy Party guest list, I'm gonna oil up one of my bros.
If you my friend, bro, you just gonna be real, fo. You ain't. First of all, me being friends with Remo, I would assume you what's the opposite of homosexual?
Heterosexual.
I would assume his ass is a homosexual. And he different. So if he was not a homosexual,
you gotta say heterosexual.
A heterosexual. So if he was a heterosexuals, bro, I'm gonna assume that you a heterosexuals and bro a heterosexuals too. I'm already a heterosexuals. So I'm assuming everybody who hangs with me is ahead of the sexuals, bro. If you not ahead of these sexuals, then...
Well, it's been rough. It was not what I was expecting at all, considering some of the rhetoric he has said. I thought we as a nation were smarter, but I guess not. To my transgender and friends and, the people who it affects, as long as you stay alive, they cannot say we don't exist. Being a Satanist means rebelling against them because they're wrong. And as long as you draw a breath, every breath you take is a rebellion. Keep on fighting because you just have to. Hail Satan, hail reason always.
Why do they still believe that black is evil and white is good? Take a look at this.
Completely convinced he's ebony black. Why? Has the white man, the yellow man, the brown man, anyone been persecuted like the black man? No. Why? Well, the color of the skin. That's what I'm trying to get on to. I'm convinced he was ebony black and gorgeous. Have you ever seen ebony, the wood itself, and the grain? And he had musical instruments built within him, everything but the trumpet, that's God's. Phil Driscoll let me know that for sure. Now, to me, that answers a big question.
Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it achieves. That's what we have to appreciate. These systems, if people say, well, how do we fix them? They're not broken. They're designed to produce exactly what you see. Mm-hmm. There's no fixing them. There really isn't, because they're perfectly designed. We need new systems, right? These systems, as they're set up, are designed to do exactly what they're supposed to do. Women have a certain position. People of color have a certain position. White people have a certain position. When you look at law enforcement, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, how do we fix it, Joy? How do we fix it? I said, you can't fix it. You know that policing, for example, in America, it came from slave patrols. The function, right? So the actual where it was derived was terrorism. They were terrorizing enslaved people that had been freed for fear that there was going to be a revolt. It never happened. You realize that they still punish us over this notion of fear of what we're going to do, because and that's their pathology. Mm-hmm. I mean, that really is their pathology. But if it actually came from slave patrols, what makes you think it's there to protect you? It's not designed to protect you. It may occasionally, but that's not what it's designed to do.
Hey, bro, what's that?
What?
That you just threw in here.
What word?
I got you on camera, bro.
I got you on camera. We're all good.
Hey, bro, you just threw that in here.
The Alameda County Courthouse is one of 2 Bay Area voting locations. The other is San Francisco City Hall.
Meanwhile, South African authorities continue to protect polling places and brace for more violence from white extremist groups determined to stop the election.
They have scales that tell you what the average height and weight and everything else is for a child of a certain age. It's not based on our standards.
It's based on middle-class white standards. But that's not the only thing. You know, this thing about when the child is supposed to walk, when the child is supposed to reach for things. You're fine. You know, like the thing that used to surprise me was the fact that black children do have motor ability much earlier than white. And so if you go by these scales, you know, alone, it'll blow your mind.
Knowledge is power. I heard when I was getting my teeth fixed, one of the dentists was telling one of the students, look now, if you see this, like her out there, in a white person, this discoloration, you start to look for a malignancy. But in a black person, that is normal. And you think about how many black people that have gone through a whole lot of surgery and everything because somebody saw this bluish discoloration inside their mouth. That's normal. So we got to be dealing with people that know they're normal.
A lot of white students draw blood, you know, by looking at the veins and, you know, finding out where the veins are and talking in there, you know. If you, on a lot of us, if you try to look and find a vein on us, you're going to be punching for days, you know.
I have a certain comfort that I place in an old black woman because, you know, in some way she reminds me of my grandmother. Or a brother that says, well, what's happening, brother? And I know that it's a certain relationship that we share and a certain kind of trust. And I think that this is the kind of thing that we got to realize that, you know, that black people got to start taking care of black people because they understand black people better than anybody else.
Listen, a man who is trying to teach his woman loves his woman. That's their form of love. They are natural teachers. They want to guide, they want to lead, they want to make sure that you are safe and you are mentally prepared for any enemy that is coming at you. Okay? So a lot of women are taking their criticism or taking their direction as a personal attack, when really it's their form of love. Men typically, from my experience, are analyzers. They analyze a person, especially the person they're with. They see your frame of thinking, they see where your weaknesses are, and they want to strengthen you. I'll go even further. When a man cares about a woman, he wants to protect her. And so knowing how vulnerable she is to potential dangers, to the enemy, to predators, to threats out in the world, he is going to analyze her critical thinking and her mind frame. And if he sees flaws in it, he sees that you are naive in certain areas, he is going to want to fix that. He's going to want to teach you. He's going to want to make you stronger, more mentally aware, so that you're not a target for dangerous people and entities in the world. Okay? That's a good man. And that's one of the deepest forms of love.
If white women have been forbidden to black men by oppression, if the black man has access to the white woman, that will make him feel more psychologically free.
It will fool them more. Let's say, for example, if you tell me, friends,
he said psychologically free.
Well, wait a minute.
He didn't say functionally free.
No, it's a fantasy, and then it's a psychosis. In other words, if you are operating, just like they tell us in psychiatry,
that means a loss of contact with reality.
If you are functioning on something that is not reality, then you've had it. Well, okay? Now, but this is something that the white supremacy system understands. You see what I'm saying? They understand. Well, now we programmed these victims to feel that if they get a white woman, they will have it. Like a black cat told me who was graduating from graduate school at Harvard, that marrying a white woman was a part of the Harvard degree. In other words, I'm really in. Do you see what I'm saying?
Part of ascending upward in.
All right.
In the
now,
system.
the system has programmed us to think that. Just like it programs a black woman to say, all right, if you have a white man, that really means that you are in. Nonsense. Do you see what I'm saying? Because white supremacy is going on. And white supremacy will go on and victimize your children and your offspring irrespective of what you were doing. In your bedroom activity. And the white supremacy system further would like the non-white and the black man to think that his phallus or his penis, if you will, is equal to an M16 rifle, which is what he maintains power with.
For decades, the U.S. government didn't just neglect black families, they targeted them. Policies were designed to tear black households apart, and it worked. Think welfare was just about support? Guess again. In the 60s, welfare programs denied benefits to families with fathers in the home. The system forced black fathers out, leaving black families struggling, divided, and vulnerable. Then there was redlining, a policy that literally drew lines around black neighborhoods, shutting families out of home ownership and wealth. Banks, real estate agents, even the government, everyone was in on it. It wasn't just a barrier, it was a trap. And the damage? Permanent. These policies didn't just take money, they took dignity, security, and hope. Decades later, black families are still feeling the impact of policies crafted to break them. This isn't an accident, it's a design.
You know what plantation they've never shown us, Abby? The most prominent ones. The ones that were most profitable. The breeding plantations. Why don't you want to show us those? You know why? Because after the research that I did for this album, you realize that the moment that a girl menstruated, she was put in a stable where a horse would be and forcibly mated, forcibly raped by a male of the slave master's choice. And when she had children, they weren't called children, they were called a litter of pups. The punishment for raping or killing a person in medieval Spain is gelding. Gelding is when you take hot pincers and you take a man's balls and dick off root and stem. Killing a person, law of the Bible, right? Medieval Spain, super religious. You killed a man, he should be killed. Why were indigenous and black people categorized as subhuman? So under the law, you would not be punished for the things that you did to us. That's why. You used to be proud, right? Used to be proud, white America, of rape and murder. Used to be proud of colonization. Used to, wow, that made us tough. And then you got ashamed of it. And that's what you're dealing with. That's what America's dealing with, a schizophrenic crisis. There's a British manual, right, that was taken out of the British Museum because within the manual, it talked about how rape was a weapon of war that should be used against the indigenous population. You're ashamed of that now. You're ashamed, right? Who was Christopher Columbus? His image has been so whitewashed, but he was trafficking little girls on an island. Who does that sound like, huh? All you right-wing defenders of Christopher Columbus and his legacy, he was trafficking 9-year-old indigenous girls on an island. Who does that remind you of, you intellectual coward? Just because liberals are dog shit doesn't mean that you shake hands with the devil.
Jeffrey Hinton.
Jeffrey Hinton.
Jeffrey Hinton.
Seen as the godfather of artificial intelligence, has quit his job at Google, warning of the dangers of AI.
Does humanity know what it's doing?
No. I think we're moving into a period when, for the first time ever, we may have things more intelligent than us.
You believe they can understand?
Yes.
You believe they are intelligent?
Yes.
You believe these systems have experiences of their own and can make decisions based on those experiences?
In the same sense as people do, yes.
Are they conscious?
I think they probably don't have much self-awareness at present. So in that sense, I don't think they're conscious.
Will they have self-awareness, consciousness?
Oh, yes. I think they will in time.
And so human beings will be the second most intelligent beings on the planet.
Yeah, but as soon as it gets really complicated, we don't actually know what's going on any more than we know what's going on in your brain.
What do you mean we don't know exactly how it works? It was designed by people.
No, it wasn't. What we did was we designed the learning algorithm. That's a bit like designing the principle of evolution. But when this learning algorithm then interacts with data, it produces complicated neural networks that are good at doing things, but we don't really understand exactly how they do those things.
This is nuclear physicist Dr. John Mullen. He discovered how to generate clean and free energy as opposed to oil. Days after this discovery, he died of arsenic poisoning. Dr. Don Wiley. He found the cure for HIV/AIDS. He mysteriously disappeared and later was found deceased. Dr. Mark A. Smith. He found a treatment for Alzheimer's. He passed away in a freak accident. This is Frank Suarez. He apparently found the cure for cancer. He mysteriously took his own life a couple of days later.
Sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine, they could be the richest country in all of Europe. I want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we ever dreamed of. That $10 to $12 trillion of critical mineral assets could be used by Ukraine and the West.
Even though my job is political analysis, I had no idea that Ukraine was sitting on so many precious minerals. Talking about coal, natural gas, metals, even oil. They have the second biggest known gas reserves in Europe. They also have 500,000 tons of lithium, which is used in reusable energy like electric vehicles. Global demand for lithium is estimated to range from 400% to 4,000% in the next coming years. To put it simply, without lithium, we can't easily have a clean future where we divest from these fossil fuels and coals and go into electric cars and other things. Y'all really think that the US is so deeply involved with Ukraine because they really care about Ukrainians? That's never been America's MO. Everyone's liberation is intertwined. America will never support any country unless they have their own vested interest on the line, which in this case could be lithium.
This is Monument Valley on the corner of Utah and Arizona, United States. Now, if you notice, these are cut blocks in the ground. And I've been trying to tell y'all that ancient people had technology that they don't tell us about. So how did these blocks happen naturally? I know there's going to be someone that drops in the comments and defends the matrix programming to try to explain how this is natural. These cuts, look at that cut. Look at these cuts all throughout the land here. You can see it's pre-cut. Y'all are seeing what I'm seeing, right? These cuts, it starts at the edge and then it goes all the way through here, even down up in here. And on the right side where my finger you can't see my finger, but over there too. This looks like somebody took a pizza cutter and just pre-sliced the pizza. So you just grab your piece. That's what that looks like. This is pre-flood. The reason why we know it's pre-flood is because there are fossilized sea creatures all up in this whole area on these rocks, these cubes and stuff. So they were building something back then. And then the flood came. And this is the evidence. This is not natural. This is not natural. Okay? Let's continue. We wouldn't even know about this unless this independent guy found this stuff. This is a cube. Look at those dimensions. Right angles. How did they do this? How did they do this? How did they cut the earth like that? Laser technology, people. I'm trying to tell you, ancient people had mad tech. And we're impressed with the iPhone. Okay? They cut the earth like this. And it's like, what were they building? Stuff like the pyramids and stuff, monoliths is what they were building. So what is the point of this video? The point of this video is to get you to question the mainstream information and question what you're being told. Because they conveniently forgot to tell us about this in school. They skipped that part. All right? Intelligent human beings, probably with the Nephilim giants, were cutting these blocks out to build monoliths and temples and all kinds of stuff back in the day. But they didn't tell us about this. Why? Why are they hiding that? Question what you're being told. My natural position, if I hear some major story, oh, you know, something happened and it was caused by this, I immediately doubt the cause. I immediately doubt the reason as to why it happened. Okay? And they're going to tell you that the pyramids were built by hand chiseling rocks out of the mountainside, perfect cubes, to build the pyramids and stuff like that. No, they used technology like lasers, and who knows how they hoisted these up. They probably had some anti-gravity stuff.
Delicious seafood steak and finger-licking chicken. High-tide Harris.
In 1917, the Phelps Dodge Company, located in Bisbee, Arizona, rounded up 1,200 striking miners who were primarily Mexican-American, forced them by gunpoint into cattle cars, and shipped them to the middle of the Mexican desert, leaving them stranded. Back then, just like now, deportation was used as a weapon to stifle organizing. Jesus Payares, he worked for the Gallup American Coal Company. His Jesus helped found the Liga Obrera de Habla Española. The union went on to grow to 8,000 members. Then, in 1935, the miners went on strike in Gallup against the Gallup American Coal Company. In an effort to break the strike, martial law was declared. The authorities of Gallup deputized 200 mine guards and ranchers who proceeded to round up and jail the mine workers. These mine guards and ranchers were like drunk at the time. The sheriff and his deputies ended up opening fire on the workers, leaving Sheriff M.R. Carmichael and 2 miners dead. Even the workers' wives and children were kept in county jails for 2 nights, and the workers were corralled into the county courthouse. The workers were being charged for murder and were being threatened with the electric chair, so many of them agreed to being deported. They arrested over 100 miners, and they were charging all of them with the murder of the one sheriff. So after weeks of being incarcerated, on June 29th, 1936, Jesus, along with 100 other Mexican mine workers and Mexican-American mine workers, were deported as undesirable aliens. That brings me to my next point, that back then, just like now, deportation was used as a weapon to stifle organizing. Immigration historians Francisco E. Valderrama and Raymond Rodriguez noted the following, quote, immigration and deportation was done in order to serve the needs of influential growers and industrialists. Regulations were loosely enforced when Mexican workers were needed to harvest crops or increase production in the mines or on the assembly lines. Conversely, the strict letter of the law was applied when Mexican labor exceeded the seasonal demand. Then, deportation raids at the work sites, usually before payday, became common occurrences. The raids were sometimes conducted at the request of unscrupulous employers.
Could you describe a typical Slayer fan?
Slayer fan. A typical. A guy just would literally out of nowhere just yell, Slayer! You know, just, go and you know, and when you see a friend walking down the street and you see that guy's wearing a Slayer shirt too, you know, you can literally, you know, you can deal, you know.
You know what?
You know that you're thinking, you know.